For 6 months, one navy had swept across the Pacific almost unchecked, winning victory after victory. Then, in a single morning in June 1942, its fortunes were reversed in a span of about 5 minutes. This is the Battle of Midway, how intelligence, timing, and a few decisive minutes turned the tide of the entire Pacific War. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese Navy dominated the Pacific. Its commanders wanted one more great battle to lure out and destroy the remaining American carriers once and for all. The bait was a tiny American outpost in the middle of the ocean, Midway Atoll. The plan was to seize Midway, force the American fleet to respond, and ambush it with an overwhelming force. It was a clever trap, but it depended on one crucial thing: surprise. And that was exactly what the Japanese did not have. In secret rooms in Hawaii, American codebreakers had been working to crack the Japanese naval code. Piece by piece, they read enough of the enemy's messages to uncover the plan, where the blow would fall, and roughly when. It was an extraordinary intelligence achievement. The ambushers were about to be ambushed. Forewarned, the American commanders gathered their carriers and hid them northeast of Midway, waiting. The Japanese fleet sailed toward the island confident it was hunting a scattered, unsuspecting enemy. In truth, it was steaming into a waiting trap of its own. On the morning of June 4th, Japanese aircraft struck Midway, while American planes rose to find the enemy fleet. The first American attacks were desperate and costly. Wave after wave of torpedo bombers pressed in low over the water and were almost wiped out, scoring few hits. It looked like a disaster, but those doomed attacks had a hidden effect. They pulled the defending fighters down low and threw the Japanese carriers into confusion. On the Japanese decks, aircraft were being frantically rearmed and refueled, bombs and fuel lines everywhere, exactly at the worst possible moment. And then high above, American dive bombers arrived, unseen, unopposed, at the perfect instant. What happened next unfolded in only a handful of minutes. The dive bombers plunged down on the crowded, vulnerable carriers below. In moments, bombs tore into decks packed with fueled and armed aircraft. Fires erupted, explosions ripped through the ships, and 3 great carriers were mortally wounded almost at once. A 4th would be hunted down and sunk later that day. In a single stroke, the striking power of the Japanese fleet had been shattered. The reversal was staggering. An enemy that had dominated the ocean for 6 months had, in one morning, lost the very core of its carrier force. The Battle of Midway did not end the war. There were years of hard fighting still to come. But it changed everything. The great offensive that had rolled across the Pacific was stopped and could never fully recover. From that point on, the balance of the war at sea began to shift, slowly at first, then decisively. Historians still study Midway as a case where intelligence and timing mattered as much as firepower, where reading the enemy's mind proved as powerful as any weapon. And they remember how narrow it was, how much hinged on a few minutes, a few brave crews, and a handful of dive bombers arriving at exactly the right time. 5 minutes over the Pacific had helped decide the fate of a world war. Midway was a war decided by cunning and timing, but some wars are won by daring plans that gamble everything on speed and surprise on land, like the audacious airborne operation that tried to leap across a country and end a war in a single stroke. That's the next story.